What happens when a moment meant to shine turns into one of the most awkward, jaw-dropping public scenes of a career? Imagine a room filled with the most powerful women in business and media, the air buzzing with expectation, the cameras trained on a single person, Meghan Markle. She steps onto the stage, poised, elegant, every movement deliberate, every smile calibrated. And then, in an instant, the room changes. A subtle shift in energy, a ripple that no one can ignore. Alison Chantal, Fortune's editor-in-chief and chief content officer, simply walks out, mid-interview, on a stage where every word, every gesture is scrutinized. What just happened? Why would a seasoned editor do something so unprecedented? And more importantly, what did Meghan do next? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You can feel it, can't you? The collective gasp in the room. The whispers. The cameras catching every micro-expression. For a woman who has lived under constant public scrutiny, this was not supposed to happen. Not in front of Fortune's most powerful women's summit. Not with thousands watching. Not now. And yet, here it was. A moment that would instantly be dissected, replayed, and debated endlessly. Let's rewind for a second. The summit itself is no ordinary gathering. It's a glittering, meticulously curated event where CEOs, founders, and visionaries mingle, network, and share insights. Every year, the spotlight is intense, the audience discerning, and the stakes impossibly high. To even be on stage is to signal that you belong at the pinnacle of influence and power. Meghan Markle, a former actress turned global advocate and now public figure navigating royalty and celebrity, had prepared for this moment meticulously. Her appearance was supposed to convey confidence, authority, and a unique personal brand that has captivated millions worldwide. Every detail was calculated. The dress, the hair, the tone of her opening remarks. And yet, the human element, an unpredictable editor walking out, threatened to upend all of it in seconds. Now, let's consider the players involved. Alison Chantal is no ordinary journalist. As Fortune's editor-in-chief and chief content officer, she's known for her incisive questioning, her sharp wit, and her unwavering standards. She's a professional who commands respect in every room she enters. To walk out mid-interview is not just a statement. It's a rare, almost unthinkable act of rebellion against a protocol that governs every professional interaction. And she chose to do it at one of the highest profile stages possible, with the eyes of the world watching. It wasn't a subtle critique or a quiet dissent. It was an unmistakable message, and the implications were enormous. Picture the moment. Meghan begins speaking, her voice calm but assertive, weaving her narrative of purpose and advocacy. The audience listens intently, hanging on her every word. But something in the exchange triggers an unspoken tension. Perhaps it's a question too sharp, a topic too probing, or a tone that clashes with her carefully crafted messaging. Alison pauses. There's a moment, a heartbeat that stretches, pregnant with anticipation. And then, without warning, she rises. She turns her back on the stage, walks deliberately out of the room, leaving Meghan mid-sentence. The cameras catch it all. The audience is frozen. The world is watching. And what about Meghan? How does someone trained to navigate media storms react in a split second when a planned interview collapses into chaos? She smiles, but it's not the same practiced smile that greets cameras at a charity gala. There's a flicker, an almost imperceptible moment of shock and confusion. Then, almost instantly, she recalibrates, her posture tightening, her tone controlled, but the room senses it. The unexpected has broken through the armor of preparation. This is not a small misstep. It is a seismic shift in perception, both for the people present and the millions who would later see the footage online. But let's pause here and consider why this moment resonates beyond the immediate shock. Meghan Markle is more than a public figure. She is a symbol. To some, she represents courage and advocacy. To others, she embodies controversy and media scrutiny. Her every move is dissected, debated, and amplified. A single public interaction, like this walkout, carries weight far beyond the room it occurs in. It invites speculation. What does this reveal about her relationships with media? About her approach to public scrutiny? About the pressures of navigating fame, influence, and personal authenticity in a world that never blinks? Even before the summit, Meghan has faced moments of intense public judgment. Every interview, every speech, every appearance is filtered through lenses both supportive and critical. The stakes here were impossibly high. A global stage, a distinguished audience, the opportunity to assert her voice among the most influential women in the world. Yet, in those few moments when Allison walked out, the story shifted. It was no longer simply an interview. It became a narrative of disruption, tension, and unanticipated vulnerability. And isn't that what makes it so compelling? The clash of control versus chaos, expectation versus reality, image versus human response. You might wonder, what exactly triggered Allison's decision? Was it a question she found offensive? A disagreement about framing or messaging? Or perhaps it was a subtle tension that had been building throughout the conversation, invisible to anyone outside that room. Whatever the reason, the result was immediate and unmistakable, an interruption so stark that it forced the audience, and now, millions of viewers, to confront a reality rarely seen in such controlled settings. And isn't that the human fascination with this story? Moments when the veneer cracks, revealing the raw, unscripted truth behind polished appearances. It's also worth noting the environment in which this took place. Washington, D.C., a city steeped in politics and influence, provides the perfect backdrop for such drama. The summit is not just an event, it's a theater of power. And on this stage, every gesture, glance, and pause becomes symbolic. Allison's walkout was more than a personal choice. It was a public act with symbolic weight. It disrupted expectations, challenged norms, and instantly became the narrative everyone would talk about. For those present, the emotional tension was palpable. For those watching online or reading the coverage later, the shock was amplified by the immediacy and intimacy of the footage. And yet, this story is more than just a public spectacle. It is an invitation to explore the deeper dynamics at play. It is about power, perception, and the delicate balance between control and spontaneity. It is about how a single unexpected action can redefine narratives, disrupt meticulously planned events, and spark global conversation. It is about Meghan Markle navigating an unprecedented challenge in real time, and the human response that followed. How does one maintain composure when the world watches, when expectations are high, and when every reaction is magnified 1,000 times over? How do you tell your own story when someone literally walks out on you mid-sentence? As viewers, we are drawn into these moments because they are rare, raw, and revealing. We are fascinated by the collision of celebrity, influence, and human emotion. We wonder, what did Meghan feel in those seconds? What thoughts raced through her mind? How did she adapt, pivot, and reclaim control in the face of public disruption? These questions are not just rhetorical. They are the emotional hooks that keep us engaged, because they connect us to the universal experience of facing unexpected challenges and needing to respond with grace, strategy, and resilience. And then there is the media reaction, which transforms the story from a moment in a room to a global conversation. Within minutes, social media ignited. Twitter feeds exploded with clips, memes, and debates. Journalists wrote think pieces analyzing every nuance of body language. Influencers weighed in with sharp commentary. Fans and critics alike dissected the footage frame by frame. Every angle was scrutinized. Meghan's posture, Allison's expression, the timing of the walkout. In a digital age where a single moment can trend worldwide within seconds, the stakes were magnified exponentially. The room's drama became a viral spectacle, with opinions forming instantly, dividing viewers, and prompting heated debate. And isn't it fascinating how a few seconds on stage can ripple across the globe, shaping perceptions in ways no one could fully anticipate? This, then, is the stage we are stepping onto. Not just the physical stage of Fortune's most powerful women's summit, but the metaphorical stage where perception, power, and human emotion collide. Here, we witness the interplay between preparation and unpredictability, authority and challenge, image and reality. Here, we explore how a public figure, poised, practiced, and globally scrutinized, responds when plans are upended. And here, we confront the tension that makes stories like this impossible to ignore: the drama, the stakes, and the humanity behind the headlines. So what happens next? How did Meghan navigate this unexpected moment? How did the audience react, the media respond, and the world interpret what unfolded. And perhaps most importantly, what does this reveal about the delicate balance of power, persona, and authenticity in the public eye? These are the questions that will drive this story forward as we dissect each moment, each reaction, and each consequence with meticulous attention. And let me promise you this, the answers are far more surprising, emotional, and revealing than anyone could have anticipated when Alison Chantal walked out on stage. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What does it feel like to walk into a room buzzing with power, influence, and expectation? Imagine stepping into a grand hall in Washington, D.C., the chandeliers glinting, the polished floors reflecting the faces of hundreds of the most accomplished women in business, media, and politics. The air is thick with ambition and anticipation. Conversations hum like electricity. Every handshake carries weight. Every glance is measured. And there, at the center of it all, is Meghan Markle, preparing to step onto the stage where the world is watching. How does a person reconcile confidence with the knowledge that one misstep could ripple across headlines, social media, and global discourse? That was the tension gripping the room as the summit began. From the moment attendees filed in, it was clear that this was no ordinary gathering. Women who have shaped industries, shattered glass ceilings, and rewritten the rules of power sat shoulder to shoulder. CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, award-winning journalists, political advisors, and rising innovators were all present, their presence a statement in itself. Everyone had come expecting inspiration, insight, and perhaps a little drama. But no one expected the drama that would unfold in the minutes to come. The stage was set with meticulous precision. Cameras were positioned to capture every angle. The lighting highlighted the speakers without being intrusive, creating an almost theatrical ambience. And then, backstage, Meghan prepared. Her team had worked for weeks to ensure that every detail, her outfit, her hair, her speech notes, reflected not only elegance, but authority. Every gesture, every word had been rehearsed. But even with all this preparation, one cannot rehearse the unpredictability of human behavior. As the moderator introduced her, the room shifted. Conversations hushed. Cameras swiveled. Meghan appeared confident, smiling, her poise impeccable. Yet, beneath that surface, there is always an element that cannot be controlled. How does someone accustomed to public scrutiny manage when the unexpected hits mid-performance? The audience was about to find out. What made this particular summit extraordinary wasn't just the speaker lineup. It was the expectation of intimate, revealing conversations. The attendees were not passive listeners. They were decision-makers, tastemakers, and influencers, accustomed to probing questions and unfiltered truths. In this environment, every word carries weight, and every reaction is scrutinized. Meghan, aware of this, began with a message of empowerment, weaving in anecdotes from her life and work. Her tone was measured, her smile steady. She was, by all appearances, in control. Yet, control is fragile. The audience could feel the undercurrent of tension, subtle but undeniable. Perhaps it was the way Alison Chantal leaned forward in her chair, her expression unreadable, a slight tightening around her mouth, signaling skepticism or impatience. Perhaps it was a question that landed differently than intended, cutting closer to reality than prepared statements could manage. The room was quiet, attentive, but there was a pulse, an awareness that something could shift in an instant. And then it did. Alison stood. Just stood. The room barely registered it at first. People assumed she might be adjusting her seat, or perhaps signaling for a break. But the movement was deliberate, and deliberate it remained as she began walking toward the exit. Mid-interview, the cameras caught every step. Every head turned. Every breath seemed suspended. What had prompted this unprecedented action? Was it a question? A comment? Or had tensions been simmering beneath the surface, finally boiling over at the most public possible moment? Meghan's reaction was immediate, though subtle. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, an almost imperceptible pause in her rhythm. For a fraction of a second, the well-rehearsed composure wavered. Then she adjusted. Smiles returned. Words continued. But the room had shifted. The audience, once fully absorbed in the prepared narrative, was now caught in a moment of uncertainty. Was Meghan in control, or was she improvising under pressure? And isn't that exactly what makes such moments fascinating to watch? The interplay of public image and human reaction, poised authority and spontaneous challenge, creates a tension that is impossible to ignore. In the seats, the reactions were mixed. Some attendees leaned forward, curious, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Others glanced at their phones, checking live social media updates or sending discreet messages. Everyone present understood that what they were witnessing was not just a deviation from the schedule. It was a glimpse behind the carefully curated curtain of public persona. Moments like this reveal the human side of power, the vulnerabilities that even the most polished figures must navigate. Backstage, Meghan's team exchanged hurried glances. Communication flickered across discreet earpieces, signals and instructions passed silently. For the audience, the disruption might have seemed sudden, almost shocking. But behind the scenes, there was a flurry of strategizing, a rapid assessment of how to maintain narrative control, composure, and credibility. In high-stakes public events, these split-second reactions can define perception for days, weeks, even months. And then there is the question of legacy. Meghan Markle is a figure whose every public move is cataloged, analyzed, and debated. A single interaction like this doesn't exist in isolation. It feeds into an ongoing narrative about who she is, what she represents, and how she navigates scrutiny and challenge. A walkout isn't merely an incident. It becomes part of the broader story, a data point in a global conversation about influence, image, and authenticity. The significance of the moment was further amplified by the summit's setting. Washington, D.C. is a city where optics matter profoundly. Every gesture, every expression, every nuance is magnified. In such an environment, Allison's exit was not a minor disruption. It was a seismic event, a public declaration of dissent in a space designed for celebration, inspiration, and dialogue. And in the immediate aftermath, the audience had only one thought. What happens next? How does one recover when the narrative suddenly shifts under your feet? Even as Meghan continued speaking, the incident reverberated throughout the room. Conversations that had been hushed became speculative. Whispers carried theories. Was this a personal disagreement, a professional statement, or something else entirely? Observers tried to parse tone, body language, and microexpressions. Every pause, every inflection, every gesture became subject to scrutiny. The human tendency to analyze the unexpected, especially in a high-profile context, kicked into overdrive. And then there was the broader audience beyond the room. Within minutes, social media began to pick up on the story. Clips of the walkout circulated, sometimes without context, sometimes with dramatic commentary. Hashtags trended. Memes emerged. Public opinion divided instantly, with some praising Meghan's composure under pressure and others questioning her handling of the situation. The incident transcended the physical space of the summit, moving into a digital arena where perception, narrative, and virality could redefine the story entirely. But the summit was more than a backdrop for controversy. It was a crucible for narrative, power, and image. Each attendee, each speaker, each camera operator contributed to the tension, the storytelling, the drama that made this moment unforgettable. And in this crucible, Meghan had to navigate not just a walkout, but the implications of a live, global audience dissecting her every move. The stakes were enormous. Every decision, every microreaction could be interpreted as strength, weakness, authenticity, or miscalculation. And isn't that what makes live events so compelling to witness? The intersection of preparation and unpredictability, control and chaos, expectation and reality, creates a tension that feels almost cinematic. So, what was happening in that room, really? The cameras, the whispers, the quick glances, these were surface indicators of something much deeper. Beneath them lay questions about authority, perception, and human reaction. How does someone accustomed to public scrutiny maintain composure when faced with an unexpected challenge? How does an audience interpret micro-moments of emotion that the speaker might barely register themselves? These are the questions that make this story irresistible, compelling, and, frankly, unforgettable. And as Meghan continued, the tension did not dissipate, it evolved. The audience, the cameras, the team, the world watching online, all were engaged in a delicate dance, a study of human behavior under pressure. Every word spoken, every pause, Every glance carried meaning far beyond what anyone could anticipate. In a space designed for inspiration and dialogue, unpredictability became the narrative. And isn't that exactly what keeps audiences glued to moments like this? The uncertainty, the stakes, the drama unfolding in real time. But even as the summit proceeded, one truth became clear. This was a moment that would be dissected endlessly. Not just for what happened, but for what it revealed about the dynamics of power, public perception, and personal composure. It was a lesson in adaptability, strategy, and emotional intelligence, all unfolding in front of hundreds of live witnesses and millions more online. And just when it seemed the room might settle, the real story, the reactions, the implications, the fallout, was only beginning to emerge. What would happen next? How would Meghan handle the subtle, but unmistakable, shift in energy? How would the audience, the media, and the world interpret what had just unfolded? And perhaps most importantly, what does this moment reveal about the complex interplay between image, authenticity, and human vulnerability? The answers were about to come, and they would change everything, more than anyone in that room could have imagined. What does it truly take to command a room filled with some of the most powerful women in the world? To speak, not just to be heard, but to resonate, to leave a lasting impression while navigating the ever-present undercurrent of judgment? Meghan Markle had prepared for this moment for weeks, if not months. Every sentence in her speech had been carefully crafted, every anecdote rehearsed to balance personal vulnerability with professional insight. But when you step onto a stage where scrutiny is inevitable, preparation can only take you so far. The rest depends on instinct, timing, and the ability to navigate the unexpected. As Meghan approached the podium, the room's energy shifted again. There's a subtle change that occurs when a prominent figure enters, a ripple that passes through the audience. Heads turn, whispers soften, attention sharpens. Cameras swivel to follow the movement, capturing the smallest micro-expressions. The audience senses confidence immediately. Her posture is straight, shoulders back, gaze steady. Every gesture is deliberate, calculated to project poise. Yet, underneath it all, there is always an undercurrent of tension. In this moment, Meghan knows she is not just speaking to the room. She is speaking to the world watching through every medium imaginable. Her opening line was calm, articulate, yet charged with purpose. She greeted the audience, acknowledged the summit, and thanked the organizers. But even in this seemingly routine introduction, there was a nuance. A subtle appeal to shared experience, to common ground, to empowerment. She referenced her own journey, hinting at both challenges faced and lessons learned, without straying into overt self-promotion. The audience responded with polite applause, the sort that masks curiosity with decorum, but Meghan could sense it. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes upon her. This was more than a speech. It was a test of influence, resilience, and composure under intense scrutiny. But just as the momentum built, the first real challenge appeared. A question from the moderator, one meant to provoke reflection, landed with more force than anticipated. It was not hostile, but it was pointed, aimed at exposing deeper insights into Meghan's approach to public life, her advocacy, and her navigation of intense media scrutiny. The question, while respectful, was also a reminder that in this room, performance alone is not enough. Depth, authenticity, and transparency are demanded, and they are evaluated in real time by an audience with exceptionally high standards. Meghan paused. Her eyes flickered briefly toward Alison Chantal, seated in the front row. The slight tightening of her jaw betrayed the tiniest moment of uncertainty. For a trained public figure, such micro-expressions are rare and fleeting. But they are human, and the audience noticed them, even if subconsciously. They sensed that something more was at play than just the words being spoken. The atmosphere, already charged with expectation, now carried a subtle tension, a question hanging in the air. How would she respond? Would she adapt gracefully, or would the unexpected shake her composure? The first few sentences of her response were measured, confident. She drew from personal experience, weaving stories of resilience, leadership, and advocacy. Her tone carried warmth, authority, and relatability, a rare combination that has helped her connect with millions worldwide. Yet, as she spoke, there was an underlying awareness, a conscious monitoring of audience reaction. Every nod, Every raised eyebrow, every slight shift in posture from the front row informed her pacing, her emphasis, her delivery. This was not just speaking, it was live strategy, improvisation within a structured performance. And then it happened. The tension that had been building, the subtle undercurrent that no one in the room could ignore, began to manifest more overtly. Alison Chantal, whose reputation for incisive, no-nonsense interviewing precedes her, leaned forward slightly. There was a glimmer of scrutiny in her eyes, a silent assessment that seemed to challenge every word being spoken. Was it disagreement? Was it impatience? Or was it simply the unspoken dynamic between a seasoned editor and a highly publicized figure navigating a delicate balance of message and perception? No one could say for certain, but the room felt it. The audience, finally attuned to the subtext, responded accordingly. Some leaned forward, intrigued by the unfolding dynamic. Others held back, cautious, sensing that they were witnessing more than just a prepared speech. The room became a living laboratory of human behavior, power dynamics, and subtle tension. And in the midst of it, Meghan continued, her voice unwavering, her words flowing with calculated cadence. But the undercurrent persisted, an invisible pressure that reminded everyone present that control is never absolute. Every anecdote she shared, every personal story, carried multiple layers of meaning. On the surface, they were narratives of leadership, empowerment, and advocacy. Beneath, they were subtle signals about resilience, adaptability, and self-awareness. She spoke about challenges faced in public life, her efforts to advocate for women and children, and the lessons learned from navigating intense scrutiny. But she did so with a balance that was both artful and strategic. Never defensive, never confrontational, yet always asserting agency. And yet, for all her preparation and poise, there was an invisible boundary being tested. Alison's presence, the subtle scrutiny, the unspoken tension, it all contributed to a sense of unpredictability. Meghan, ever perceptive, adapted in real time, shifting emphasis, adjusting tone, and modulating energy to maintain authority while projecting warmth. The audience was captivated, not merely by her words, but by the intricate dance unfolding before them, a live demonstration of strategy, poise, and human response under pressure. Then came a moment that changed the room entirely. As Meghan delved into a particularly personal anecdote, Alison's expression shifted, a subtle narrowing of eyes, a slight purse of lips, a glance toward the exit that seemed to signal something more than mere observation. The audience felt it immediately, though few could articulate exactly what was happening. The energy in the room shifted from attentive engagement to heightened anticipation. Something was about to break the rhythm, and everyone instinctively leaned in, waiting. And then, Alison stood, a movement so sudden and deliberate it could not be mistaken for anything else. The air seemed to crack. Heads turned. The cameras captured every motion. A seasoned editor, walking out mid-interview, leaving Meghan in mid-sentence. The collective intake of breath was almost audible, though the room remained outwardly composed. In that instant, the narrative pivoted. The prepared, rehearsed performance gave way to raw unpredictability, and the room, and the world watching, was thrust into a moment of suspended tension. Meghan's reaction was immediate, though nuanced. A flicker of surprise, a subtle pause, a recalibration in posture and tone. She continued speaking, but the energy had shifted irrevocably. The audience sensed the disruption, and the story was no longer solely about the content of her message. It had become a narrative of response, composure, and human instinct under the unrelenting gaze of scrutiny. What was once a carefully choreographed moment of influence had transformed into a live study of adaptation, resilience, and perception. The attendees, already influential figures themselves, could not help but analyze every microsecond. Whispers exchanged, glances shared, subtle shifts in body language, all indicators that the room had entered a new phase of engagement. What had been expected to be a controlled, inspiring dialogue was now an unfolding drama of power dynamics, authority, and emotional intelligence. And in this high-stakes environment, the stakes extended beyond the room. Social media, news outlets, and global audiences would witness the incident, magnifying the tension and turning a live interaction into a worldwide spectacle. Even as Meghan continued, answering questions with composure and grace, the undercurrent of disruption remained. Each sentence carried dual weight, one for the audience in the room, and one for the millions who would later analyze every frame online. The challenge of speaking authentically, while maintaining authority, while navigating an unexpected act of defiance from a seasoned editor, was immense. And yet, it was precisely this challenge that made the moment unforgettable, a real-time display of human poise and adaptability in the face of the unpredictable. But the most compelling aspect was not just Meghan's response. It was the contrast between expectation and reality. The audience came prepared for insight, for inspiration, perhaps even for minor drama. No one, however, anticipated the complexity of witnessing authority, strategy, and vulnerability collide in such a stark, visible way. The cameras captured it all, the whispers reflected it all, and the room became a living canvas of tension, anticipation, and observation. And as the interview progressed, the stakes continued to rise. Every word, every gesture, every measured pause contributed to the unfolding narrative. Meghan's ability to remain poised, while adapting dynamically to an unprecedented situation, became a central focus. The audience was captivated not merely by her message, but by her performance under pressure, a raw, compelling study of resilience, control, and human instinct. Yet even as the room adjusted to the disruption, the tension was far from resolved. The walkout had altered the dynamic, changed the energy, and introduced a new, unpredictable variable into a meticulously planned environment. The question on everyone's mind, both in the room and beyond, was, how would this moment shape perception, influence narrative, and redefine what was meant to be an inspiring dialogue among powerful women? And in that anticipation, the chapter closes, not with resolution, but with a lingering, unanswerable question. How does one maintain authority and authenticity when confronted with the unexpected, especially on a global stage where every micro-moment is scrutinized? The answer, as we will see, is not simple, and it would take every ounce of Meghan's composure, strategy, and instinct to navigate what came next. But what unfolded after this pivotal moment would change the story entirely, and no one in the room, or beyond, could have predicted it. What does it feel like to witness someone you've just been listening to walk out mid-conversation, leaving the room stunned, the cameras rolling, and the world watching? Imagine it. Meghan Markle, poised, articulate, delivering her insights at Fortune's most powerful women's summit, suddenly confronted by a disruption that no one could have predicted. Alison Chantal, editor-in-chief and chief content officer of Fortune, rises from her seat, her movement deliberate, her exit unmistakable. Mid-interview, mid-sentence, she begins walking out. The air itself seems to shudder with disbelief. The initial reaction in the room is subtle. For the first second, some attendees think perhaps she is adjusting her chair, excusing herself momentarily. But within moments, the reality sinks in. This is not a casual gesture. This is a bold, public statement. Every head turns. Cameras pivot. The whispering begins. The tension becomes palpable, almost tangible. The room, already charged with anticipation for Meghan's speech, now vibrates with the uncertainty of a live, unscripted moment. What drove Alison to do it? Was it a disagreement? A reaction to a question? A subtle clash of personalities? Or was it something deeper, an unspoken judgment, an editorial instinct that refused to compromise? No one in the room knows for sure, yet everyone senses the gravity. Walking out mid-interview is virtually unheard of, particularly in a forum where professionalism, decorum, and optics are paramount. And the audacity of this move ensures it will be remembered, dissected, and debated endlessly. Meghan's initial reaction is almost imperceptible, a fleeting flicker across her face that hints at surprise and confusion. For someone accustomed to intense media scrutiny, this micro-expression is significant. It's a crack in the polished exterior, a human moment in a space designed for controlled, intentional performance. And yet, almost immediately, she recalibrates. She maintains her posture, her voice steady, her tone measured. She continues speaking, her words flowing, yet the undercurrent of tension cannot be ignored. The audience reacts in mixed ways. Some are frozen in shock, unsure how to interpret what they are seeing. Others lean forward, intrigued, sensing that they are witnessing a rare glimpse into dynamics that are usually hidden from public view. The air is thick with speculation. What just happened? Why did it happen? And what does it mean for the interaction that was supposed to unfold? For the attendees, the disruption transforms from a minor distraction into the central event. Suddenly, the interview is no longer just about Meghan's insights. It's about her response, her composure, and her ability to navigate the unexpected. Backstage, Meghan's team is in overdrive. Communication flickers across discrete earpieces, signals exchanged, rapid assessments made. Damage control, narrative framing, and live strategy are all happening simultaneously, even as Meghan remains composed in front of the audience. These split-second decisions are critical. A misstep could alter perception, not just for the room, but for millions of viewers who will later analyze every movement, every microexpression, every word. Social media begins its instant amplification. Clips of the walkout circulate within minutes. Hashtags trend. Analysts and commentators weigh in, offering their perspectives. Fans and critics alike dissect the footage frame by frame. In today's world, a live disruption doesn't stay contained. It becomes a global spectacle. The audience in the room experiences one form of tension, but the digital audience magnifies it exponentially. Suddenly, what seemed like a localized, high-profile incident transforms into a worldwide event. The implications of Allison's walkout extend beyond the immediate interruption. This is a symbolic act, an assertion of authority, a subtle critique, and a dramatic pivot all at once. In the high-stakes environment of Fortune's Summit, where optics and presentation are everything, the move signals disruption, challenge, and unpredictability. The audience, knowingly or not, witnesses a collision of power dynamics. The public persona of a global figure against the unyielding standards of a seasoned media professional. And then there's the human element. Meghan, for all her public experience, faces a situation where control is taken from her in an instant. Her response is a lesson in adaptability. Every word, gesture, and pause is amplified by the presence of both live and digital observers. The tension between maintaining authority and expressing authentic reaction is delicate. One microexpression, one hesitated word, could reshape the narrative entirely. In the room, whispers begin circulating. People speculate. Did she offend Allison? Did Allison disagree with the framing of a story? Was this a premeditated move, a spontaneous reaction, or a manifestation of long-standing tension between media and subject? The uncertainty is electrifying. Humans are wired to observe and analyze the unexpected, and in this charged environment, every subtle cue becomes a signal, every small movement a statement. What makes this moment so captivating is not merely the disruption itself, but the ripple effect it creates. For Meghan, the challenge is immediate. How to regain control, how to continue delivering her message, how to ensure that the audience leaves with the intended insights rather than being consumed by the drama of the interruption. Her response is measured yet human, authoritative yet adaptive. It's a balancing act few are prepared to execute under such intense scrutiny. Meanwhile, the cameras and journalists capture every detail. The footage will travel far beyond the summit room, dissected by media outlets, social media influencers, and the public at large. In the age of instant communication, a single moment can define perception, shape narrative, and influence public opinion. The walkout, small as it may seem in real time, becomes a focal point for a larger conversation about authority, authenticity, and human behavior under pressure. Meghan continues to speak, weaving her narratives of resilience, leadership, and advocacy. But even as her words flow, the energy in the room is permanently altered. The audience now processes multiple layers of information simultaneously. The content of her speech, the disruption by Allison, the subtle cues in body language, and the implications for perception and influence. What was meant to be an inspirational dialogue has transformed into a multidimensional study of power dynamics, human composure, and the unpredictable consequences of live interaction. The tension in the room is mirrored by reactions online. Clips circulate rapidly, often accompanied by commentary that frames the walkout in dramatic terms. Some viewers sympathize with Meghan, admiring her poise under pressure. Others speculate about internal conflicts, editorial disagreements, or hidden tensions. The digital amplification of the moment ensures that no nuance is lost, but interpretations vary widely. Every microsecond is analyzed, every expression evaluated, and every word scrutinized. And yet, the incident also reveals an essential truth about human behavior under scrutiny. Even those who are experienced, prepared, and polished cannot fully anticipate the unpredictability of others. The walkout is a stark reminder that control is never absolute, that public performance exists alongside human unpredictability, and that moments of disruption, while challenging, can reveal resilience, authenticity, and strategic thinking in real time. For Meghan, the moment becomes an opportunity as much as it is a challenge. How she navigates the disruption communicates more than any prepared remarks could. It speaks to her capacity for composure, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. It demonstrates that leadership is not just about articulation or insight, but about managing unpredictability with poise and authority. And for the audience, both live and digital, it becomes an unforgettable study of power, image, and human response. But as the audience processes the walkout, one question looms larger than any other. What comes next? How will Meghan leverage this moment? How will the narrative evolve as the cameras continue rolling and the audience continues to watch? And perhaps most intriguingly, what does Allison's unexpected exit truly signify? Not just for this interview, but for the larger dynamics of power, authority, and public perception in high-stakes interactions? The answers are about to unfold, and they will shape the story in ways no one could yet predict. What does it mean to maintain composure when the world is watching and a highly unexpected disruption unfolds in front of you? Imagine standing on a stage, delivering carefully rehearsed words, when someone with authority, someone whose presence carries both scrutiny and influence, suddenly walks out mid-interview. That's exactly the scenario Meghan Markle faced at Fortune's most powerful women's summit. The moment Allison Chantal rose from her seat and exited the room mid-conversation, the atmosphere shifted instantly. What happens next is not just about a public figure responding. It's about human instinct, strategy, and emotional resilience under intense pressure. For Meghan, the first fraction of a second is critical. Her initial reaction is almost imperceptible, a micro-expression of surprise, a slight widening of the eyes, a subtle pause in mid-sentence. For those trained in reading body language, it's a textbook moment, a human response to a breach of expectation. But what makes this moment compelling is not just that she was surprised, it's how quickly she recalibrates. She doesn't falter, doesn't stumble, and doesn't allow the disruption to derail the entire narrative she has worked meticulously to convey. In public performance, that ability to recover instantly separates those who command attention from those who crumble under scrutiny. The audience, aware of the shift even before the cameras fully captured it, leans in collectively. Some are curious, some are sympathetic, some are skeptical. The energy in the room transforms from anticipation to heightened tension. The walkout is no longer a peripheral event. It dominates the collective attention. Every sentence Meghan utters is now filtered through a dual lens: the content itself and the context of the disruption. How she responds is scrutinized at multiple levels: by seasoned attendees in the room, by the media covering the event, and by the millions who will later see clips online. Meghan's response is measured yet strategic. She continues speaking, her voice calm but assertive, projecting authority while subtly acknowledging the interruption. She adjusts her pacing, allowing natural pauses to emphasize points, conveying both thoughtfulness and poise. She employs storytelling techniques that draw the audience back into the core message, using personal anecdotes to re-establish connection and credibility. Every word, every gesture, every nuanced inflection communicates resilience without defensiveness. And yet, beneath the surface, there is tension. The human mind reacts instinctively to perceived challenges. Meghan's emotional intelligence is on full display as she manages multiple layers simultaneously, staying in control of her own emotional state, maintaining authority in front of the audience, and managing perception in real time as the unexpected unfolds. It's a high-wire act, performed without faltering. The audience, consciously or subconsciously, senses this skill in action. They see not just the words but the unspoken narrative of control, adaptation, and poise under pressure. The disruption also forces a subtle recalibration of her messaging. Anecdotes that might have been minor details gain significance as she emphasizes themes of resilience, adaptability, and leadership in the face of unforeseen challenges. Her storytelling becomes a mirror of the moment itself, a live demonstration of the very qualities she discusses. The audience is not just listening. They are witnessing an embodiment of the principles being articulated. Emotionally, the scene is layered. There is surprise, certainly, but also determination, focus, and subtle defiance. Meghan does not react with visible anger, frustration, or panic, yet the tension is palpable. It is not overreaction, but calibrated response, demonstrating mastery of emotional composure. This is the kind of performance that blends authenticity with strategy. She shows humanity without sacrificing authority and vulnerability without inviting judgment. In the seats, reactions vary. Some audience members are silently impressed, recognizing the skill required to maintain composure under public disruption. Others are tense, unsure whether the equilibrium will hold. Some take notes, consciously or subconsciously, about leadership under pressure. In many ways, this moment transcends the original purpose of the interview. It becomes a live lesson in navigating unpredictability at the highest levels. Social media, of course, begins to explode even before the interview concludes. Clips are shared in real time, GIFs are created, and commentary spreads across platforms. People debate Meghan's composure, dissect her body language, and speculate on the circumstances that triggered Allison's exit. In this digital age, a single reaction can shape narrative, influence perception, and define public discussion far more than the original content of the interview. Meghan's response, therefore, becomes both performance and statement. How one handles disruption can overshadow even carefully prepared insights. And yet, there is also a humanizing aspect. Even the most polished public figures are not immune to surprise, to disruption, to unexpected challenge. Meghan's ability to navigate the walkout with grace and strategy offers insight into the intersection of vulnerability and authority. The audience witnesses not a flawless persona, but a person capable of assessing, adapting, and projecting composure in the face of immediate uncertainty. It's a reminder that leadership and influence are not about perfection. They are about response, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. The subtle power dynamics at play also cannot be ignored. Alison Chantal's walkout is an assertion of authority, intentional or not, that momentarily disrupts the established narrative. Meghan's reaction, in turn, asserts her agency and capacity to maintain control over her own story. The room, live and digital alike, is caught in the interplay of these dynamics. Disruption versus composure, challenge versus strategy, unpredictability versus prepared performance. Observers sense the tension, and it elevates the stakes of every subsequent word and gesture. Interestingly, the disruption allows Meghan to reframe the narrative without overtly addressing the walkout. She shifts emphasis to stories that reinforce resilience and empowerment, subtly demonstrating that external interruptions cannot dictate her message. The audience sees, in real time, how she manages perception while remaining authentic, a delicate balance few can achieve under intense scrutiny. The moment becomes a lesson in leadership, poise, and human adaptability. Even as she continues, subtle cues communicate her awareness of the disruption. Eye contact is directed strategically, pauses are measured, and intonation varies to convey authority and empathy simultaneously. Every movement is deliberate, signaling confidence and reinforcing narrative control. For those watching, the response is a masterclass in managing unforeseen challenges with strategic composure. The room's energy remains charged. The initial shock of the walkout has evolved into focused attention, with the audience now analyzing nuances of expression, tone, and message. Meghan's ability to maintain poise while reinforcing her core points demonstrates not only skill, but also psychological insight, an understanding of how perception, narrative, and emotion interact in high-stakes situations. And yet, even as she navigates the immediate disruption, the tension lingers. The audience wonders, will the narrative fully recover? How will this moment shape perception both immediately and in the broader public discourse? How does one maintain credibility and authority when the environment itself has shifted dramatically in an instant? The answers are unfolding in real time, making every word and gesture crucial. Meghan's reaction also highlights a critical aspect of influence, the ability to convert challenge into opportunity. By continuing to speak with clarity, authority, and measured emotion, she transforms an unanticipated disruption into a demonstration of resilience and leadership. The audience is not just receiving a message, they are witnessing an example of its principles in action. Every pause, every anecdote, every subtle inflection reinforces the narrative that even in the face of unexpected challenges, one can maintain composure, clarity, and influence. The chapter closes on this tension. Meghan has navigated the disruption gracefully, but the implications extend far beyond the stage. The audience, both present and virtual, is left pondering the interplay of power, perception, and human response. How will this incident define public understanding of her persona? What lessons about leadership, composure, and influence can be drawn from this moment? And perhaps most intriguingly, what happens next? The follow-up questions, the media interpretation, the extended narrative, will ultimately shape the story in ways no one could have predicted. What happens after a high-profile disruption becomes public knowledge? How does a single, unplanned act, Alison Chantal walking out mid-interview, transform from a live event into a global media phenomenon? Within minutes of the incident at Fortune's most powerful women's summit, the story began to spread beyond the walls of the ballroom, traveling at lightning speed across social media, news outlets, and digital forums worldwide. The moment had exploded from a controlled live interaction into an uncontrollable narrative, one that would dominate headlines, provoke debate, and shape perceptions for days to come. As the cameras captured Meghan's measured response, social media users were quick to react. Clips of the walkout circulated almost instantaneously. Twitter feeds erupted with commentary, memes, and hot takes. Instagram and TikTok amplified moments frame by frame, breaking down micro-expressions, pauses, and gestures. Hashtags related to the incident trended within minutes, drawing millions of viewers into a conversation they hadn't expected to have. The digital audience, unlike the live one, could replay, scrutinize, and analyze every nuance repeatedly, intensifying the scrutiny Meghan faced. Traditional media outlets quickly picked up the story. Headlines varied in tone, some sympathetic, praising Meghan's composure, others speculative, questioning the nature of the interaction or suggesting tension behind the scenes. Journalists dissected the incident from multiple angles, examining body language, tone, and timing, while weaving in context about Meghan's public persona, her advocacy work, and her history with media scrutiny. The narrative evolved rapidly, shaped as much by interpretation and speculation as by the actual events. Online discourse revealed stark divisions in perception. Supporters highlighted Meghan's poise under pressure, emphasizing her ability to continue speaking with authority despite an unprecedented disruption. Critics, on the other hand, framed the incident as a sign of tension or disagreement, questioning whether the disruption hinted at deeper conflicts or missteps. Discussions exploded on comment sections, threads, and discussion boards, with each perspective analyzed and counter-analyzed in near real time. The story had taken on a life of its own, far beyond the control of anyone present at the summit. Memes and short video clips played a particularly powerful role in shaping public perception. Social media thrives on condensation, moments compressed into seconds, dramatized with music, captions, and commentary. The walkout, already visually striking, became a viral touchpoint, amplified through humor, satire, and speculation. Audiences worldwide, even those unfamiliar with the context, were drawn into the spectacle, forming impressions based on highly edited, emotionally charged fragments of the event. Analysts and commentators began drawing historical parallels. Mid-interview walkouts are exceedingly rare, especially in settings of high professional decorum. This unusual occurrence became a focal point for discussion about media power dynamics, the intersection of celebrity and influence, and the psychology of public perception. Articles explored the implications. What does it mean when a journalist, known for rigor and professionalism, makes a bold public statement. How does the subject's response, Meghan's composure, alter the narrative? And how does the audience, both live and digital, interpret these layers of behavior? Meghan's team, acutely aware of the media frenzy, acted swiftly. Statements were prepared to clarify the narrative, emphasizing the positive takeaways from the summit and reinforcing the key messages of empowerment, advocacy, and resilience. Public relations experts knew that controlling the message in the immediate aftermath was critical. Social media monitoring and rapid response strategies were deployed to mitigate misinterpretation while highlighting Meghan's poise and professionalism. Every public communication became an extension of her stage performance, a continuation of her narrative in the digital arena. Interestingly, the media frenzy amplified not only Meghan's actions, but also Alison Chantal's. Journalists and commentators speculated on her motivations. Was the walkout a strategic statement, a spontaneous reaction, or something more personal? Profiles of Alison's career history, interviewing style, and professional demeanor circulated alongside coverage of the incident, offering readers and viewers context while fueling the debate. Suddenly, the story was not just about a single interview. It was about the dynamic clash between two high-profile professionals, each operating under intense scrutiny. Social psychology played a role in shaping audience perception. Humans are naturally drawn to conflict and unpredictability, particularly when it involves figures of influence. The walkout satisfied a range of cognitive and emotional triggers: surprise, tension, authority dynamics, and emotional resilience. Viewers were compelled to form opinions, discuss outcomes, and share content, ensuring that the story circulated far beyond the immediate audience. The incident had all the hallmarks of viral media: drama, spectacle, and a clear narrative tension. Coverage in international media expanded the scale of the frenzy. Outlets in Europe, Asia, and Australia highlighted the disruption, often framing it within the broader context of Meghan's public life, her advocacy work, and her ongoing relationship with media scrutiny. Headlines emphasized intrigue, drama, and spectacle, ensuring that the story reached a global audience. The narrative evolved further as cultural interpretation influenced how the incident was perceived. Some markets focused on Meghan's composure, others on the audacity of the walkout, and still others on the symbolic clash of personalities and power dynamics. Public reactions ranged from admiration to outrage. Supporters lauded Meghan's ability to maintain control, framing her response as a lesson in emotional intelligence and strategic leadership. Critics questioned her handling, speculated about underlying tensions, and debated whether the disruption indicated vulnerability or strength. Influencers weighed in, dissecting body language, inflection, and timing, further magnifying the story's reach. For many, the incident became a case study in power, influence, and media dynamics. The story also provided an unexpected lens on contemporary media culture. In a world where content spreads instantly, where opinions form in seconds, and where micro-moments are amplified into global phenomena, a single disruption can redefine public perception. The incident illustrated how narrative control is both fragile and strategic. Meghan's response demonstrated that composure and authenticity can shape interpretation even in the face of unprecedented challenges. Conversely, Alison's walkout underscored how assertive, unexpected actions can dominate attention and redirect narrative focus. In addition, the media frenzy fueled speculation about what it would mean for future engagements. How would Meghan handle subsequent interviews or appearances? Would Alison provide additional commentary or remain silent? How would media outlets continue to frame the incident in the context of Meghan's ongoing public image? The unanswered questions created a feedback loop. Coverage prompted discussion, discussion amplified coverage, and amplification reinforced global engagement. The story had moved from a live-stage disruption to a sustained narrative that captured attention across platforms, time zones, and audiences. And yet, amid the frenzy, the emotional undertones remained central. Observers were drawn not just to the mechanics of the walkout, but to the human reactions. Meghan's poise, the subtle tension in the room, the mixture of surprise and strategy unfolding in real time. Audiences empathized, speculated, and debated, creating a shared experience of intrigue, suspense, and reflection. The incident became more than news. It became a lens through which people examined leadership, composure, and human behavior under pressure. The frenzy continued to evolve as additional context emerged. Analysts reviewed past interviews, public appearances, and media interactions, seeking patterns and potential explanations for the walkout. Pundits debated motivations, relationships, and professional dynamics, while fans and critics amplified the discourse through social media commentary. Every additional piece of information, real or speculative, added new layers to the narrative, ensuring that the story remained relevant long after the summit itself had concluded. By the time the media cycle reached its peak, the walkout had become iconic, a defining moment not just of the summit, but of Meghan's public engagement and professional persona. The incident demonstrated the power of unpredictability in shaping narrative, the influence of perception in defining public discourse, and the enduring impact of human behavior on media ecosystems. Every micro-expression, every choice, and every reaction continued to be analyzed, debated, and referenced. And just when it seemed the story could settle, new questions emerged. How would Meghan address the incident in future public appearances? What impact would the walkout have on her relationship with media professionals? Could this disruption alter the way she approaches interviews, or even her broader public strategy? The answers would unfold in the coming days, weeks, and months. But one thing was certain. The media frenzy had transformed a single unexpected act into a multidimensional story of power, perception, and human behavior. When an unexpected event occurs in a high-profile setting, the immediate audience often becomes the most fascinating part of the story. At Fortune's Most Powerful Women Summit, Meghan Markle's interview disruption by Alison Chantal triggered a ripple effect that extended far beyond the stage. The people sitting in the room, some of the most influential figures in business, media, and politics, were now participants in a live spectacle, one that combined surprise, tension, and the raw unpredictability of human behavior. Their reactions would become an essential part of understanding the full impact of the incident.